Hi everyone. So in today's video I'm going to talk about something that I've seen discussed in a couple different places and recently on the RPG Brigade group. There's a little bit of discussion, and that is failing. So rolling a 1, and what does that mean? Obviously, when you roll a 1, you have failed whatever it is you're trying to do. You know, it depends on what rule systems you're using, but most rule systems, if you've rolled a 1, that means that you have not only failed, but something bad has happened because of this failure. It's not just like, oh, you misjudged something and you tripped and fell, but you tripped and fell and sprained your wrist, or something a little bit bigger than that. But what I wanted to talk about today is using those failures to help create and craft the story. If our characters, every time they attempted to do something, they succeeded, that would get really boring really fast. Just because you want there to be that risk element involved and that something could go wrong, this could not work out the way I want. Some roles, a failure is kind of just that, it's a failure. There's not really a way to make it into a story or to have somebody like, oh, you tripped while going across this room and now you're dead. Well, that's a bit taking it to extreme. So it's also a matter of, for the GM, looking at the failure and figuring out what would be appropriate as the consequence of this failure. And as a player, you know, I want to succeed. I want my character to do great stuff. So why would I ever want to not spend a benefit, not spend whatever mechanic it is in your system that allows you to make it a lesser failure or, you know, take a failure and make it not happen? Well, because it makes it more interesting. It makes the characters a little bit more dynamic. You can have them learn from their failure. You can embrace that failure. And failures make really great story moments. Real characters have flaws. Real characters have bad days. Real characters sometimes run into a string of bad luck. And for me, some of my favorite in-game moments have been when someone's character failed spectacularly. And you know, I've never played a game where that failure has necessarily led to death. A couple times where it's led to very serious injuries or almost death, but that's also just kind of the style of games we play. Our regular GM and what I'm planning on doing when I GM, characters aren't just going to die because of a bad roll of the dice. It's going to have to be involved somehow in story moment. That's just how I play. If you like playing that, you know, a 1 could mean that your character dies, great. So to give you an example, this happened a couple of years ago, and it was a series of just bad die rolls. We were looking for something in this house, and we couldn't find what we were looking for, but we kind of realized that, oh, maybe there's a secret room. And one of the other players, he failed 2 perception checks and a willpower check. The series of failed rolls resulted in him tripping upon entering the room, misidentifying a latch to the secret room, pulling the latch without first checking or letting the rest of the party know what was going on, and what ended up happening was he tripped. His tripping led him to seeing this latch, thinking, ah, that must be the latch for the secret room. It wasn't. It was a decoy latch that released a whole bunch of poison smoke into the room. Luckily, through some quick thinking on the rest of the party, we kind of cleared the room and got outside, and everybody was fine. And, you know, that character who had all the fails, just kind of, he was having a bad day. But all of the players, we were all laughing, and we left that session just being like, oh my gosh, that was ridiculous, that was great, we made it through, but what a great story. Another example is in Shadowrun, I had I'm forgetting the exact term, but I rolled enough so that I succeeded, but I also rolled too many 1s. So that meant I succeeded, but there was a complication. I was trying to summon a spirit to kind of watch over things. The complication was I summoned a much, much stronger spirit than I meant to, and that led to my character, my consciousness getting transported to another plane, and the spirit taking over my character's body for a little bit. Then I came back, and then had to deal with getting the spirit kind of not possessing my body. And that led to some great story moments. So, and I think this is something of like, as a player, it's good to look at what it is that you're trying to do, and, you know, if you have something that's like, yes, you really have to succeed at this. You are at the final door and you need to pick this lock. Maybe that's the time that you spend your benefit die, or you do whatever mechanic it is to make that failure into a success, or give you a chance to re-roll, or whatever it is. But also, don't be afraid to let your characters fail. It can result in some great story moments, as well as just some great character building. And then for GMs, let your players' characters fail, but also make sure that whatever the consequence of that failure fits and isn't too extreme. You know, if somebody fails a perception check, most of the time that's not going to result in that character dying. I think some of it is, are you willing to pay the price of whatever that failure is? A failure that leads to the death of a character is going to be really a big plot moment for the rest of the party, but is it going to make sense? But is that failure worth it to the player? You know, if somebody does fail at something that is yes, they need to find this thing to continue with the storyline and to go to the next point, make sure you have, as a GM, make sure you have a backup in case they do fail on, you know, noticing the hidden door or listening and getting the bit of information that they need to then go off and rescue the prince. Have a backup for those failures. You can still let the failure happen, but then, you know, have something in your back pocket. Have a plan for how am I going to get them this piece of information or steer them in the right direction after this failure. It's fun having those critical failures as story moments, and I think for me, ultimately, it's a matter of finding a nice balance between having a consequence for a critical failure, especially critical failures over just a regular failure, but still making sure that that consequence seems appropriate for whatever it was they were trying to do. So yeah, let me know what your thoughts are on failing, and if you've had any great stories where a failure led to a great character moment or story moment. Let's talk about it more down below. How do you handle failing? Do you try and avoid it at all costs, or do you let the die roll and never re-roll? Let's talk about it more down in the comments. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Roll for Initiative. Bye!